Hello and welcome to this second First Look exploring session looking at Cornelia, translated by Thomas Kyd from the play by Robert Garnier. And we are, three acts into the play. We have two to go. We've been enjoying its rhetorical flourishes and the story of Cornelia and her personal misfortunes and the wider misfortunes of Rome, primarily put forward by Cicero. Now, we didn't do the argument last time. The play comes with an argument, giving us an outline of stuff that's happened before and a little bit of what's sort of going on in the play. But as for anyone who's just joined us, might want a pick-me-up to know what on earth is going on, I'm going to read the argument now before we dive into Act 4. So, the printed argument. Cornelia, the daughter of Metellus Scipio, a young Roman lady, as much accomplished with the graces of the body and the virtues of the mind as ever any was first married to young Crassus, who died with his father in the discomfiture of the Romans against the Parthians. Afterward she took to second husband Pompey the Great, who, after 3 years, upon the first fires of the civil wars betwixt him and Caesar, sent her from thence to Mytilene, there to attend with the uncertain success of those affairs. And when he saw that he was vanquished at Pharsalia, returned to find her out, and carry her with him into Egypt, where his purpose was to have reinforced a new army and give a second assault to Caesar. And Caesar today will be read by Eric, who will also be reading Cassius. Eric, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm conflicted.
It is indeed. We have mentioned already Cornelia. Cornelia will be read by, or you're also reading Brutus as well. Cornelia is
Rachael, Nicole, actor, New Jersey.
And we also will have a messenger and maybe reading some other parts as well, who will be read by.
Hello, Dan, based in Montpellier, France.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I'm now going to continue reading the argument after that brief divertisement. So, we've heard about what happened to the first husband and a sense of some of the problems with the second husband of Cornelia, who, in this voyage going into Egypt, he was murdered by Achilles and Septimus the Roman before her eyes, and in the presence of his young son Sextus and some other senators, his friends. After which she retired herself to Rome. But Scipio, her father, being made general of those that survived after the battle, assembled new forces and occupied the greater part of Africa, allying himself to Juba, king of Numidia, against all whom Caesar, after he had ordered the affairs of Egypt and the state of Rome, in the end of winter marched. And there, after many light encounters, was a fierce and furious battle given amongst them, near the walls of Thapsus, where Scipio, seeing himself subdued and his armies scattered, he betook himself with some small troop to certain ships, which he caused to stay for him. Thence he sailed towards Spain, where Pompey's faction commanded, and where a sudden tempest took him on the sea, that drave him back to Hippon, a town in Africa, at the devotion of Caesar, where, lying at anchor, he was assailed, beaten, and assaulted by the adverse fleet. And for he would not fall alive into the hands of his so mighty enemy, he stabbed himself, and suddenly leapt overboard into the sea, and there died. Caesar, having finished these wars and quietly reduced the towns and places thereabouts to his obedience, returned to Rome in triumph for his victories, where this most fair and miserable lady, having overmourned the death of her dear husband, and understanding of these cross events and hapless news of Afric, together with the piteous manner of her father's end, she took, as she had cause, occasion to redouble both her tears and lamentations, wherewith she closeth the catastrophe of this their tragedy. So yes, backstory, a little bit there, which may or may not help in understanding what is going on. Otherwise, go back to part 1. We covered all the acts 1 through 3 there. Without further ado, however, as that little divertissement, which we put in hoping that one of our number might make it, who's a little late, we are going to dive into Act 4. Act 4, we'll call this Scene 1, as Cassius and Decimus Brutus meet.
Accursed Rome, that armst against thyself a tyrant's rage, and makes a wretch thy king. For one man's pleasure, O injurious Rome, thy children against thy children thou hast armed, and thinkst not of the rivers of their blood that erst were shed to save thy liberty. Because thou ever hatest monarchy, now o'er our bodies tumbled up on heaps like cocks of hay when July shears the field. Thou build'st thy kingdom, and thou seatest thy king. And to be servile, which torments me most, employest our lives and lavishest our blood. O Rome, accursed Rome, thou murderest us and massacrest thyself in yielding thus. Yet are there gods? Yet is there heaven and earth that seem to fear a certain thunder? No, there are no gods. Or if there be, they leave to see into the world's affairs. They care not for us, nor account of men. For what we see is done by chance. 'Tis fortune rules, for equity and right have neither help nor grace in heaven's sight. Scipio hath wrenched a sword into his breast and launched his bleeding wound into the sea. Undaunted Cato tore his entrails out. Afranius and Faustus murdered died. Juba and Petreius fiercely combating have done each other equal violence. Our armies broken, and the Libyan bears devour the bodies of our citizens. The conquering tyrant, high in fortune's grace, doth ride triumphing over our commonwealth, and mournful we behold him bravely mounted with stern looks in his chariot, where he leads the conquered honor of the people yoked. So Rome to Caesar yields both power and pelf, and o'er Rome Caesar reigns in Rome itself. But Brutus, shall we dissolutely sit and see the tyrant live to tyrannize? Or shall their ghosts that died to do us good plain their tombs of our base cowardice? Shall lamed soldiers and grave gray-haired men point at us in their bitter tears and say, see where they go that have their race forgot, and rather choose unarmed to serve with shame than armed to save their freedom and their fame.
I swear by heaven, the immortals' highest throne, their temples, altars, and their images, to see, for one, that Brutus suffer not, his ancient liberty to be repressed. I freely marched with Caesar in his wars, not to be subject, but to aid his right. But if, envenomed with ambitious thoughts, he lift his hand imperiously o'er us, if he determined but to reign in Rome, or followed Pompey but to this effect, or if these civil discords now dissolved, he render not the empire back to Rome, then shall he see that Brutus this day bears, the self-same arms to be avenged on him, and that this hand, though Caesar blood abhor, shall toil in his, which I am sorry for. I love him dearly, but the love that men their country and their birthright bear exceeds all loves, and dearer is by far our country's love than friends or children are.
If this brave care be nourished in your blood, or if so frank a will your soul possess, why haste we not, even while these words are uttered, to sheathe our new ground swords in Caesar's throat? Why spend we daylight, and why dies he not, that by his death we wretches may revive? We stay too long. I burn until I be there to see this massacre and send his ghost to theirs, whom subtly he for monarchy made fight to death with show of liberty.
Yet haply he, as Sylla whilom did, when he hath rooted civil war from Rome, will therewithal discharge the power he hath.
Caesar and Sylla, Brutus, be not like. Sylla, assaulted by the enemy, did arm himself, but in his own defense, against both Cinna's host and Marius, whom when he had discomfited and chased, and of his safety thoroughly was assured, he laid apart the power that he had got and gave up rule, for he desired it not. Whereas Caesar, that in silence might have slept, nor urged by aught but his ambition, did break into the heart of Italy, and like rude Brennus brought his men to field, traversed the seas, and shortly after, backed with wintered soldiers used to conquering, he aimed at us, bent to exterminate whoever sought to intercept his state. Now having got what he hath gaped for, dear Brutus, think you Caesar such a child, slightly to part with so great a signory? Believe it not, he bought it dear, you know, and traveled too far to leave it so.
But Cassius, Caesar is not yet a king.
No, but dictator. In effect, as much he doth what pleaseth him, a princely thing. And wherein differ they, whose power is such?
He is not bloody.
But by bloody jars he hath unpeopled most part of the earth. Both Gaul and Afric perished by his wars. Egypt, Emanthia, Italy, and Spain are full of dead men's bones by Caesar's slain. The infectious plague and famine's bitterness, or the ocean, whom no pity can assuage, though they contain dead bodies numberless, are yet inferior to Caesar's rage, who, monster-like with his ambition, hath left more tombs than ground to lay them on.
Soldiers with such reproach should not be blamed.
He with his soldiers hath himself defamed.
Why then you think there is no praise in war?
Yes, where the causes reasonable are.
He hath enriched the empire with new states,
which with ambition now he ruinates.
He hath revenged the Gauls' old injury, and made them subject to our Roman laws.
The restful almonds with his cruelty he rashly stirred against us without cause, and hazarded our city and ourselves against a harmless nation kindly given, to whom we should do well for some amends, to render him and reconcile old friends. These nations he did purposely provoke to make an army for his after aid against the Romans, whom in policy he trained in war to steal their signory, like them that, striving at the Olympian sports to grace themselves with honor of the game, anoint their sinews fit for wrestling, and ere they enter, use some exercise. The goals were but for a game fetched about, for civil discord brought by Caesar's slights, to whom, to be king himself, he soon removed, teaching a people hating servitude to fight for that did their deaths conclude.
The wars once ended, we shall quickly know whether he will restore the state or no.
No, Brutus, never look to see that day, for Caesar holdeth signory too dear. But I know while Cassius hath one drop of blood to feed this worthless body that you see, what reck I death to do so many good? In spite of Caesar, Cassius will be free.
A generous or true ennobled spirit detests to learn what tastes of servitude.
Brutus, I cannot serve nor see Rome yoked. No, let me rather die 1,000 deaths. The stiff-necked horses champ not on the bit, nor meekly bear the rider, but by force. The sturdy oxen toil not at the plough, nor yield unto the yoke, but by constraint. Shall we then, that are men and Romans born, submit us to unurged slavery? Shall Rome, that so many hath overthrown, now make herself a subject to her own? O base indignity! A beardless youth whom King Nicomedes could overreach commands the world and bridleth all the earth, and like a prince controls the Romulists, brave Roman soldiers, stern-born sons of Mars, and none, not one, that dares to undertake the intercepting of his tyranny. O Brutus, speak! O say, Servilius, why cry you aim and see us used thus? But Brutus lives, and sees, and knows, and feels that there is one that curbs their country's wheel. Yet, as he were the semblance, not the son of noble Brutus, his great-grandfather, as if he wanted hands, sense, sight or heart, he doth, deviseth, sees, nor dareth aught that may extirp or raise these tyrannies. Nor doth Brutus that to brute belongs, but still increaseth by his negligence his own disgrace and Caesar's violence. The wrong is great and overlong endured. We should have practiced, conspired, conjured 1,000 ways and weapons to repress, or kill outright this cause of our distress.
Who prodigally spends his blood bravely to do his country good, and liveth to no other end but resolutely to attempt what may the innocent defend and bloody tyrant's rage prevent. And he that in his soul assured hath water's force and fire endured, and passed the pikes of 1,000 hosts to free the earth from tyranny, and fearless scours on dangerous coasts to enlarge his country's liberty. Were all the world his foes before, now shall they love him evermore. His glory spread abroad by fame on wings of his posterity, from obscure death shall free his name to live in endless memory. All after ages shall adore and honor him with hymns therefore. Yearly the youth for joy shall bring the fairest flowers that grow in Rome, and yearly in the summer sing o'er his heroic kingly tomb. For so the two Athenians, that from their fellow citizens did freely chase vile servitude, shall live for valiant prowess blessed. No sepulchre shall e'er exclude their glory, equal with the best. But when the vulgar, mad, and rude repay good with ingratitude, hardly then they them reward, that to free them from the hands of a tyrant ne'er regard in what plight their person stands. For high Jove, that guideth all, when he lets his just wrath fall, to revenge proud diadems with huge cares did cross kings' lives, raising treasons in their realms, by their children, friends, or wives. Therefore he whom all men fear, feareth all men everywhere. Fear, that doth engender hate, hate enforcing them thereto, maketh many undertake many things they would not do. Oh, how many mighty kings live in fear of petty things! For when kings have sought by wars stranger towns to have o'erthrown, they have caught deserved scars, seeking that was not their own. For no tyrant, commonly, living ill, can kindly die, but either traitorously surprised doth coward poison quail their breath, or their people have devised on their guard to seek their death. He only lives most happily, that free and far from majesty can live content, although unknown. He fearing none, none fearing him, meddling with nothing but his own, while gazing eyes at crowns grow dim.
And exit chorus. Joining us slightly late due to Wi-Fi problems, reading the chorus today, and also Mark Antony is
Liza Graham, actor with bad Wi-Fi, London.
So that's effectively a unit of action there. Brutus and Cassius. A bit worried about Caesar. It's not good. Not looking good there. They're not keen. They're not keen. After Act 3, which was very anti-Caesar, Act 4, different people are anti-Caesar as well. Thoughts from the room. Eric.
I like how when Cassius starts his speech, I mean, obviously, like the way it's written, you kind of without having staged it and stuff, you think that he's doing a monologue, and then you get, like, I don't know, 7 lines from the end, and he goes, "But Brutus shall absolutely sit," and it's like, okay, I didn't know there was someone else here until I started saying it. Because that changes the context of, like, everything else as well.
Yes, and also just the way that they Cassius is doing the talking. Brutus is very much on the receiving end of Cassius's dialogue there. So it's interesting how that structurally works. Rachael.
Oh shit! No, I was gonna say what you just said. That it sounds like Brutus in this scene is being recruited to the Cassius's side, or Cassius's point of view, and is presenting an argument, that is very interesting, like because even as he's saying it, he's asking Brutus to kill a countryman, and talking about civil war versus foreign wars.
Yeah, and we're getting various ups of antes, from previous thing where Cornelia's quite happy to die so long as Caesar dies as well. Now we get Brutus, who's willing to die, Cassius rather, willing to die 1,000 deaths. So whether that's true and whether that really is an appropriate level of feeling in contrast is an interesting question. Any other thoughts from the room on this opening unit of action? As in a sense, in story terms, we're sort of opening out our selection of characters here. It's all been very Cornelia, Cicero focused in the first 3 acts, whereas now we have 2 new characters coming on, followed admittedly by the chorus, who I think are still the same chorus at this point. But Dan,
I would probably need more time to break down Cassius's rhetorical method of trying to persuade Brutus, but it is clever how just in his first speech to him, he doesn't invoke Caesar's name until the very end there.
Yeah. Yes.
Try to get him on his side before you make it personal.
Yeah. We're all against tyrants, aren't we? Being against tyrants is a perfectly legitimate thing, isn't it? Absolutely. Have you noticed that Caesar is remarkably like a tyrant? Liza.
I always find it curious how plays of this nature handle Julius Caesar while living in a monarchy. So, you can have a very philosophical discussion on the nature of tyranny and the fact that it's best to not live under a tyranny and what you should do about tyranny, and then you have an absolute monarch ruling you. And yes, there's a parliament. You're represented. Since Magna Carta, you're represented if you're male and landowning. But it's always interesting to see how playwrights juggle that.
Yeah, because we're worried about someone becoming a king. Going, well, this country we've had those for quite a while. Rachael, were you waving, and then Eric?
No, I was just going to say that, because they bring up Scylla, and it makes you think that there has been unrest for a while. And so there's perhaps this heightened feeling of, the lack of freedoms because of this civil unrest. And at the same time, not wanting it to be continued by, getting into this and to getting into these political plots that, is going on, just to a desire not to maintain a status quo, but to reinstate a status quo that's been dissolved by, just past civil broils, I guess.
And for more on Scylla and Marius, do go to the Wounds of Civil War, available as a first look exploring session on the YouTube channel. Eric.
I was just going to say that it's interesting how it starts off with, oh, Rome, oh, how we can't live sort of as slaves and stuff. And then by the end of the scene, you've got him talking about hands and legs and, sort of, which is very, like, bringing it back from, the big picture of, Rome and this vague sort of city to sort of the human body. I don't know, just very interesting.
Anyway, we need to move on to another scene in this act. So the chorus is transmogrified into Mark Antony, and Cassius has, interesting form, morphed into Caesar. So let us go into what we'll call second scene of the act. Enter Caesar and Mark Antony.
O Rome, that with thy pride dost overpeer the worthiest cities of the conquered world, whose honour got by famous victories hath filled heaven's fiery vaults with frightful horror. O lofty towers, O stately battlements, O glorious temples, O proud palaces, and you brave walls, bright heaven's masonry, graced with 1,000 kingly diadems. Are ye not stirred with a strange delight to see your Caesar's matchless victories, and how your empire and your praise begins through fame which he of stranger nations wins? O beauteous Tiber, with thine easy streams that glide as smoothly as a Parthian shaft, turn not thy crispy tides like a silver curl, but back to thy grass-green banks to welcome us, and with gentle murmur to haste to tell the foaming seas the honour of our fight? Trudge not thy streams to Triton's mariners to bruit the praises of our conquest past, and make their vaunts to old Oceanus, that henceforth Tiber shall salute the seas, more famed than Tiger or fair Euphrates. Now all the world well nigh doth stoop to Rome. The sea, the earth, and all is almost ours, be it where the bright sun with his neighbour beams doth early light the pearled Indians, or where his chariot stays to drop the day till heaven unlock the darkness of the night. Be it where the sea is wrapped in crystal ice, or where the summer doth but warm the earth, or here or there where is not Rome renowned. There lives no king, how great soe'er he be, but trembleth if he once but hear of me. Caesar is now earth's fame and fortune's terror, and Caesar's worth hath stained old princes' praises. Rome speak no more of either Scipio, nor of the Fabii, nor Fabricians. Here let the Deci and their glory die. Caesar hath tamed more nations, taken more towns, and fought more battles than the best of them. Caesar doth triumph over all the world, and all they scarcely conquered a nook. The Gauls that came to Tiber to carouse did live to see my soldiers drink at Loire, and those brave Germans, true-born martialists, beheld the swift Rhine underrun mine ensigns. The Britons, locked within a watery realm and walled by Neptune, stooped to me at last. The faithless Moor, the fierce Numidian, the earth that the Euxine Sea makes sometimes marsh. Those stony-hearted people that inhabit where sevenfold Nilus doth disgorge itself, have all been urged to yield to my command. Yea, even this city that hath almost made a universal conquest of the world, and that brave warrior, my brother-in-law, that ill-advised repined at my glory, Pompey, that second Mars, whose haught renown and noble deeds were greater than his fortunes, proved to his loss. But even in one assault, my hand, my hap, my heart exceeded his, when the Thessalian fields were purpled o'er with either army's murdered soldiers' gore. When he, to conquering accustomed, did conquered fly, his troops discomfited. Now Scipio, that longed to show himself descent of African, so famed for arms, he durst affront me and my warlike bands upon the coasts of Libya, till he lost his scattered army, and to shun the scorn of being taken captive, killed himself. Now, therefore, let us triumph, Antony, and rendering thanks to heaven as we go for bridling those that did malign our glory. Let's to the capital.
Come on, brave Caesar, and crown thy head and mount thy chariot. The impatient people run along the streets, and in a rout against thy gates they rush, to see their Caesars after dangers past, made conqueror and emperor at last.
I call to witness heaven's great thunderer that gainst my will I have maintained this war, nor thirsted I for conquest bought with blood. I join not in the death of citizens, but through my self-willed enemies' despite and Romans' wrong I was constrained to fight.
They sought to eclipse thy fame, but destiny reversed the effect of their ambition, and Caesar's praise increased by their disgrace that recked not of his virtuous deeds. But thus we see it fareth with the envious.
I never had the thought to injure them. Howbeit I never meant my greatness should by any other's greatness be overruled. For as I am inferior to none, so can I suffer no superiors.
Well, Caesar, now they are discomfited, and crows are feasted with their carcasses. And yet, I fear you have too kindly saved those that your kindness hardly will requite.
Why, Antony, what would you wish me do? Now shall you see that they will pack to Spain and joined with the allies there encamped, and joined with the exiles there encamped, until the spirit that doth them defend do bring their treasons to a bloody end.
I fear not those that to their weapons fly, and keep their state in Spain to die.
Whom fearest thou then, Mark Antony?
The hateful crew, that wanting power in field to conquer you, have in their coward souls devised snares to murder thee and take thee at unwares.
Will those conspired my death live by me?
In conquered foes what credit can there be?
Besides their lives, I did their good to restore.
Oh, but their country's good concerns them more.
What, think they me to be their country's foe?
No, but that thou usurpst the right they owe.
To Rome have I submitted mighty things.
Yet Rome endures not the command of kings.
Who dares to contradict our emperor?
Those whom thy rule hath robbed of liberty.
I fear them not, whose death is but deferred.
I fear my foe until he be interred.
A man may make his foe for his friend, you know.
A man may easier make his friend his foe.
Good deeds the cruelest heart to kindness bring.
But resolution is a deadly thing.
If citizens my kindness have forgot, whom shall I then not fear?
Those that are not.
What shall I slay then all that I suspect?
Else cannot Caesar's empery endure.
Rather, I will my life in all neglect, nor labour I my vain life to assure. But so to die as dying I may live, and leaving off this earthly tomb of mine, ascend to heaven upon my winged deeds. And shall I not have lived long enough in so short a time I have so much famed? Can I too soon go taste Cocytus' flood? No, Antony, death cannot injure us, for he lives long that dies victorious.
Thy praises show thy life is long enough, but for thy friends and country all too short. Should Caesar live as long as Nestor did, yet Rome may wish his life eternized.
Heaven sits our time with heaven may not dispense.
But we may shorten time with negligence.
But fortune and the heavens have care of us.
Fortune is fickle, heaven imperious.
What then shall I do?
As befits your state, maintain a watchful guard about your gate.
What more assurance may our state defend than the love of those that do on us attend?
There is no hatred more, if it be moved, than theirs whom we offend and once beloved.
Better it is to die than to be suspicious.
'Tis wisdom yet not to be credulous.
The quiet life that carelessly is led is not alonely happy in this world, but death itself doth sometime pleasure us. That death that comes unsent for or unseen, and suddenly doth take us at unaware, methinks is sweetest. And if heaven were pleased, I could desire that I might die so well. The fear of evil doth afflict us more than evil itself, though it never be so sore.
And exeunt Caesar and Antony, and through the great power of performance and theatre, Mark Antony will now transmogrify into a chorus of Caesar's friends. So it's a different chorus.
O fair sun that gently smiles from the orient pearled isles, gilding these our gladsome days with the beauty of thy rays, free from rage of civil strife, long preserve our Caesar's life, that from sable Afric brings conquests whereof Europe rings. And fair Venus, thou of whom the Aeneades are come, henceforth vary not thy grace from Julius' happy race. Rather cause thy dearest son, by his triumphs new begun, to expel from forth the land fierce war's quenchless firebrand, that of care acquitting us, who at last adore him thus, he a peaceful star appear, from our walls all foes to clear. And so let his warlike brows still be decked with laurel boughs, and his statues newly set with many a fresh-flowered coronet. So in every place let be feasts and masques and mirthful glee, strewing roses in the street when their emperor they meet. He his foes hath conquered, never leaving till they fled, and abhorring blood at last pardoned all offences past. For high Jove the heavens among, their support that suffer wrong, doth oppose himself again bloody-minded, cruel men. For he shorteneth their days, or prolongs them with dispraise, or his greater wrath to show, gives them over to their foe. Caesar, a citizen so wronged of the honour him belonged, to defend himself from harms, was enforced to take up arms. For he saw that envy's dart, pricking still their poisoned heart, for his sudden glory got, made his envious foe so hot. Wicked envy, feeding still foolish those that do their will, for thy poisons in them pour sundry passions every hour, and to choler doth convert purest blood about the heart, which o'erflowing of their breast suffereth nothing to digest. Other men's prosperity is their infelicity, and their choler then is raised when they hear another praised. Neither Phoebus' fairest eye, feasts nor friendly company, mirth or whatsoe'er it be, with their humour can agree. Day and night they never rest, spiteful hate so pecks their breast, pinching their perplexed lungs with her fiery poisoned tongues. Firebrands in their breasts they bear, as if Tisiphon were there, and their souls are pierced as sore as Prometheus' ghost and more. Wretches, they are woe-begone, for their wound is always one, nor hath Charon power or skill to recure them of their ill.
And exit. Give us a C. Give us an A. Give us an E. Yeah, we've really got the cheerleaders out in force here for Caesar. There's really seem, yeah, isn't he great? Isn't he great? People are saying bad things about him. But no, fab, you can't say anything bad about Caesar. No, great chat. Great bloke. Yeah, so, Antony, careful now. No, I'll be fine. That's my mini précis there. Thoughts from the room on this act, which is very much giving us a wider canvas again, isn't it? It's we've got different elements of factions. We got Caesar's side, we got Brutus and Cassius' side. We've obviously spent 3 acts with the losing side. But these are the people who are standing and have some level of power in various different ways. Making their pitch and saying things. Thoughts in the room. I'm just waffling on now. I've literally ran out of things to say a few seconds ago. Liza, do you have something?
I do. Again, I love the portrayals of the various players in this particular play, and Antony is such a yes man. He's the kind of guy, we're trying to morally show a lesson about the dangers of power and the dangers of tyranny, and Antony seems to be an enabler of tyranny, and a lot of this seems drawn possibly from Machiavelli, to say, you should be feared. If you suspect anyone, you should just kill them and not wait for them to rebel, because they're going to rebel because they're terrible, envious people. So you should just kill them. Just kill them.
Yeah, it's a good system. We had a bit of that in I think it was in Tragedy of Antony, where there's basically someone going up to Caesar, different Caesar, just going, "Hey, kill just destroy this, kill everyone. That'll be great. It'll be fine." And then kill the children of Cleopatra, etc. And then Caesar says, "Yeah, okay, off you go and do it." And goes, "Ooh, me? No, not so sure." So there's a slightly different yes man there. I might be getting that slightly wrong. But yeah, there is that sense of politic. What do you do to hold on to power? How far and how bloody do you go? Eric, did I see a wave?
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's interesting how. Well, I think the play that you're referring to is the Tragedy of Cleopatra, where we had like that sort of face off between Caesar and Cleopatra at some point.
No, I think it was in the first play as well. I think there was an explicitly there's a scene with I think. But you may be right. You may be right.
We're probably both right.
It's probably in both. It's probably in both. I'm gonna check now, so I'm gonna pick up a book. Go on, Eric.
I was just gonna say that it's interesting how Caesar starts off as this like, look, it's me. I'm wonderful. I conquered everything almost, and then like by the end of the scene, he's like, better it is to die than be suspicious, which is like, it feels very naive compared to like before. I don't know, maybe that's just me. And again, I guess he understands that, like, you know, as a ruler, you need someone to rule over. You can't like kill everybody.
Other thoughts in the room? Silence falls. Yeah, it's to say it's a much wider political game going on in Act 4. And it also I don't know whether it's there to give Cornelia just a little bit of a break after a very Cornelia heavy sequence. Maybe, you know, just to give the audience a break from Cornelia as well. You know, just going, well, there's only so much you can do with Cornelia. She'd gone pretty high in her death, destruction, kill mode, and to try and feed some of that into Act 4 might be a bit much. I'd love the chorus in this act. I'm really liking this chorus. It's absolutely great. You don't understand him, man. He's so good.
Well, he had to kill everyone because they were being envious of him.
Yeah, this makes it fine. Rachael, did you have something there?
No, I was just gonna say that, you know, with Cornelia, we get kind of a very personal account of you know, the tyranny that people are living under with Caesar, and then with you know, Brutus and Cassius, and now Caesar and Mark Antony, we get people moving into the motions, and you see that there's this growing discontent, and it's not just one singular instance of this, but, you know, maybe the hair that breaks the camel's back is what Pompey's death is supposed to signify, I guess.
Eric?
I'm gonna say the thing that I was thinking about. I'm not entirely sure it's. Yeah. Anyway, the relationship between Antony and Caesar seems to be like sort of the Gaston Le Fou relationship, where he's like, you know, obviously Caesar is Gaston, and you know, looking at himself in the mirror, going, "Yeah, I'm wonderful, aren't I?" And the other guy is going, "Yes, you are, aren't you?" Sort of, I don't know, pointing him in the direction that he wants, basically.
Dan. Muted at the moment.
This is an undeveloped thought, but I was just looking at the structure of the course from act to act, and we're not able to see it in our document. But if one were to look at the printing, the way that the units are broken up, in every single act, it's done differently. So in this one, I think it's done by every every unit has four verse lines. The one before was the one that had the weird structure of like 3, and then one of them would be indented. Another one had 6, I believe. It's just something to follow up on because it seems all very much on purpose for what the function of the course is. There.
Yeah. Just a note on the thing I was talking about from the Tragedy of Antony. It's very much there that Agrippa's trying to persuade Caesar to do an awful lot of murdery death things, and Caesar's being. No, Caesar wants to do the murdery death thing. So Agrippa's saying no, don't do the murdery death thing. Try not to, but do lots of robbing. That's fine. That's that debate. I was getting that slightly muddled.
And one more undeveloped thought, but I wonder how much this act is, the absence of Cornelia is not just to give her a breather, but I wonder if it's also to draw parallels. I mean, this is probably really obvious to everyone else who's listening to it, that with what's happening with Caesar there. And so, yeah, we're supposed to be at the forefront of all of this. We're thinking of actually Cornelia through the vehicle of Caesar and company.
Excellent. Right, we now have Act 5, and as we've been resting, Dan, before we came to Act 5, for when the messenger arrives. But we've got quite a chunk of text to do coming up, and we're going to let this rattle through. Take a sip of water, and see how this all goes. So for Act 5, we have I think a single scene. We have a messenger coming to Cornelia. The chorus, I don't know which chorus it is yet, is present. So we'll see where this goes.
Unhappy man, amongst so many wracks, as I have suffered both by land and sea, that scornful destiny denies my death. Oft have I seen the ends of mightier men, whose coats of steel base death hath stolen into, and in this dire war before mine eyes beheld their corses scattered on the plains, and endless numbers falling by my side, nor those ignoble, but the noblest lords, mongst whom above the rest that moves me most, Scipio, my dearest master, is deceased. And death that sees the noble's blood so rife, full gorged triumphs and disdains my life.
We are undone.
Scipio hath lost the day, but hope the best, and hearken to his news.
How cruel fortune.
His misfortunes yet must I report to sad Cornelia, whose ceaseless grief, which I am sorry for, will aggravate my former misery.
Wretch that I am, why leave I not the world? Or wherefore am I not already dead? O world, O wretch!
Is this the undaunted heart that is required in extremities? Be more confirmed, and madam, let not grief abuse your wisdom like a vulgar wit. Haply the news is better than the noise. Let's hear him speak.
Oh no, for all is lost. Farewell, dear father.
He is saved, perhaps.
Methinks I hear my master's daughter speak. What sighs, what sobs, what plaints, what passions have we endured, Cornelia, for your sake?
Where is thine emperor?
Where our captains are, where our legions, where our men at arms, or where so many of our Roman souls? The earth, the sea, the vultures and the crows, lions and bears are their best sepulchres.
Oh, miserable.
Now I see the heavens are heaped with rage and horror against this house.
O earth, why opest thou not?
Why wail you so? Assure yourself that Scipio bravely died, and such a death excels a servile life. Say, messenger, the manner of his end will haply comfort this your discontent.
Discourse the matter of his hard mishap, and what disastrous accident did break. So many people bent so much to fight.
Caesar, that wisely knew his soldiers' hearts and their desire to be approved in arms, sought nothing more than to encounter us. And therefore, faintly skirmishing in craft, lamely they fought to draw us further on. Oft, to provoke our wary, well-taught troops, he would attempt the entrance on our bars, nay, even our trenches, to our great disgrace, and call our soldiers cowards to their face. But when he saw his wiles, nor bitter words could draw our captains to endanger us, coasting along and following by the foot, he thought to tire and weary us fro thence, and got his willing hosts to march by night with heavy armor on their hardened backs down to the seaside, where before fair Thapsus he made his pioneers, poor weary souls, the self same day, to dig and cast new trenches and plant strong barricades, where he encamped, resolved by force to hold us hard at work. Scipio no sooner heard of his designs, but being afraid to lose so fit a place, marched on the sudden to the same city where few men might do much, which made him see of what importance such a town would be. The fields are spread, and as a household camp of creeping emmets in a country farm that come to forage when the cold begins, leaving their crannies to go search about, cover the earth so thick as scarce we tread, but we shall see 1,000 of them dead. Even so, our battles, scattered on the sand, did scour the plains in pursuit of the foe. One while at Thapsus we begin to trench to ease our army if it should retire. Another, while we softly sally forth, and wakeful Caesar that doth watch our being, when he perceives us marching o'er the plain, doth leap for gladness, and, to murder vowed, runs to the tent for fear we should be gone, and quickly claps his rusty armor on. For true it is, that Caesar brought at first an host of men to Afric, meanly armed, but such as had brave spirits and combating had power and wit to make a wretch a king. Well, forth to field they marched all at once, except some few that stayed to guard the trench. Them Caesar soon and subtly sets in rank, and every regiment warned with a word, bravely to fight for honor of the day. He shows that ancient soldiers need not fear them that they hath so oft disordered, them that already dreamed of death or flight, that tired would ne'er hold out if once they see that they o'erlaid them in the first assault. Meanwhile, our emperor at all points armed, whose silver hairs and honorable front were warlike locked within a plumed casque, in one hand held his targe of steel embossed, and in the other grasped his cutlass, and with a cheerful look surveyed the camp, exhorting them to charge and fight like men, and to endure whate'er betided them. For now, quoth he, is come that happy day, wherein our country shall approve our love. Brave Romans know this is the day and hour that we must all live free or friendly die. For my part, being an ancient senator, an emperor and consul, I disdain the world should see me to become a slave. I'll either conquer, or this sword you see, which brightly shone, shall make an end of me. We fight not, we like thieves, for others' wealth. We fight not, we to enlarge our scant confines, to purchase fame to our posterities by stuffing of our trophies in their houses. But 'tis for public freedom that we fight. For Rome we fight, and those that fled for fear. Nay more, we fight for safety of our lives, our goods, our honors, and our ancient laws. As for the empire and the Roman state, due to the victor, thereon ruminate. Think how this day the honorable dames with blubbered eyes and hands to heaven upreared sit invocating for us to the gods that they will bless our holy purposes. Methinks I see poor Rome in horror clad and aged senators in sad discourse moan for our sorrows and their servitude. Methinks I see them while lamenting thus their hearts and eyes lie hovering over us. On then, brave men, my fellows and Rome's friends, to show us worthy of our ancestors, and let us fight with courage and conceit, that we may rest the masters of the field, that this brave tyrant valiantly beset may perish in the press before our faces, and that his troops, as touched with lightning flames, may by a horse in heaps be overthrown, and he bloodthirsting wallow in his own. This said, his army crying all at once with joyful tokens did applaud his speeches, whose swift shrill noise did pierce into the clouds like northern winds that beat the horned Alps. The clattering armor, buskling as they paced, rung through the forest with a frightful noise, and every echo took the trumpet's clang, when, like a tempest raised with whirlwind's rage, they ran at each over other hand and foot, wherewith the dust, as with a darksome cloud, arose, and overshadowed horse and man. The darts and arrows on the armor glanced, and with their fall the trembling earth was shaken. The air that thickened with their thundering cries, with pale wan clouds, discolored the sun. The fire and sparks from forth their armor flew, and with a duskish yellow choked the heavens. The battles locked with bristle-pointed spears, two at the half-pike freely charge each other and dash together like two lusty bulls that, jealous of some heifer in the herd, run head to head, and sullen will not yield till dead or fled the one forsake the field. The shivered lances rattling in the air fly forth as thick as motes about the sun, when with their swords fleshed with the former fight, they hew their armor and they cleave their casques, till streams of blood like rivers fill the downs, that being infected with the stench thereof, circloys the ground, and of a champagned land makes it a quagmire, where knee-deep they stand. Blood-thirsty Discord, with her snaky hair, a fearful hag with her fire-darting eyes, runs across the squadrons with a smoky brand, and with her murdering whip encourageth the over-forward hands to blood and death. Bellona, fired with a quenchless rage, runs up and down, and in the thickest throng casts the ground, and madding makes a pool, which in her rage free passage doth afford, that with our blood she may anoint her sword. Now, we of our side and urge them to retreat, and now before them we retire as fast as on the Alps the sharp northeast wind, shaking a pine tree with their greatest power, one while the top doth almost touch the earth, and then it riseth with a counterbuff. So did the armies press and charge each other with self-same courage, worth, and weapons too, and prodigal of life for liberty, with burning hate, let each at other fly. Thrice did the cornets of the soldiers cleared, turns to the standard to be new supplied, and thrice the best of both was fain to breathe, and thrice recomforted there bravely ran, and fought as freshly as they first began, like two fierce lions fighting in the desert to win the love of some fair lioness, where they have vomited their long-grown rage and proved each other force sufficient. Passant regardant, softly they retire. Their jawbones dyed with foaming froth and blood, their lungs like sponges rammed within their sides, their tongues discovered, and their tails long chaining, till jealous rage, engendered with rest, returns them sharply, set them at the first, and makes them couple when they see their prize, with bristled backs and fire-sparkling eyes, till tired or conquered, one submits or flies. Caesar, whose king-like looks, like day-bright stars, both comfort and encourage his to fight, marched through the battle, laying still about him, and subtly marked whose hand was happiest, who nicely did but dip his spear in blood, and who more roughly smeared it to his fist, who staggering fell with every feeble wound, and who more strongly paced it through the thickest. Him he inflamed and spurred and filled with horror, as when Alecto in the lowest hell doth breathe new heat within Orestes' breast, till outward rage with inward grief begins, a fresh remembrance of our former sins. For then, as if provoked with pricking goads, their warlike armies, fast locked foot to foot, stooping their heads low bent to toss their staves, they fiercely open both battalions, cleave, break, and raging tempest like o'erturn, whate'er makes head to meet them in this humor. Our men at arms in brief began to fly, and neither prayers, entreaty, nor example of any of their leaders left alive had power to stay them in this strange career. Straggling, as in the fair Calabrian fields, when wolves for hunger raging through the wood, make forth amongst the flock the scattered flies, before the shepherd that resistless lies.
Oh, cruel fortune.
None resisting now. The field was filled with all confusion of murder, death, and direful massacres. The feeble bands that yet were left untired had more desire to sleep than seek for spoil. No place was free from sorrow. Everywhere laid armed men, all trodden with their horses, dismembered bodies, drowning in their blood, and wretched heaps lie mourning of their maims, whose blood is from a sponge or bunch of grapes crushed in a winepress, gusheth out so fast, as with the sight doth make the sound aghast. Some should you see that had their heads half cloven, and on the earth their brains lie trembling. Here one new wounded helps another dying. Here lay an arm, and there a leg lay shivered. Here horse and man all turned for mercy cried, with hands extended to the merciless that stopped their ears and would not hear a word, but put them all remorseless to the sword. He that had hap to escape doth help afresh to reinforce the side whereon he served. But seeing that there the murdering enemy pell-mell pursued them like a storm of hail, they gan retired where Juba was encamped. But there had Caesar eftsoon tyrannized, so that despairing to defend themselves, they laid aside their armor, and at last offered to yield unto the enemy, whose stony heart that ne'er did Roman good would melt with nothing but their dearest blood. And Scipio, my father, when he beheld his people so discomfited and scorned, when he perceived the labor profitless to seek by new encouraging his men to come upon them with a fresh alarm, and when he saw the enemy's pursuit to beat them down as fierce as thundering flints and lay them level with the charged earth, like ears of corn with rage of windy showers, their battles scattered and their ensigns taken. And to conclude, his men dismayed to see the passage choked with bodies of the dead, incessantly lamenting the extreme loss and suspirable death of so brave soldiers, he spurs his horse, and breaking through the press, trots to the haven where his ship he finds, and hopeless trusteth to the trustless winds. Now, had he thought to have arrived in Spain to raise new forces and return to the field? But as one mischief draws another on, a sudden tempest takes him by the way, and casts him up near to the coast of Hippon, where the adverse navy sent to scour the seas did hourly keep their ordinary course, where seeing himself at anchor, slightly shipped, besieged, betrayed by wind, by land, by sea, all raging mad to rake his better vessels, the little while this naval conflict lasted, behold, his own was fiercely set upon, which being sore beaten till it break again, ended the lives of his best fighting men. There did the remnant of our Roman nobles before the foe and in their captain's presence die bravely, with their fortunes in their fists. Then Scipio, that saw his ships through gold and by the foe fulfilled with fire and blood, his people put to the sword, sea, earth, and hell, and heaven itself conjured to injure him, steps to the poop, and with a princely visage, looking upon his weapon, died with blood. Sighing, he sets it to his breast and said, since all our hopes are by the gods beguiled, what refuge now remains for my distress but thee, my dearest, ne'er deceiving sword? Yea, thee, my latest fortune's firmest hope, by whom I am assured this hap to have, that being free-born, I shall not die a slave. Scarce had he said, but cruelly resolved, he drenched it to the pommel through his sides, that through the wound the smoky blood ran bubbling, wherewith he staggered, and I stepped to him to have embraced him. But he, being afraid to attend the mercy of his murdering foe that still pursued him and oppressed his ships, crawled to the deck, and life with death to ease, headlong he threw himself into the seas.
O cruel gods, O heaven, O direful fate, O radiant sun that slightly gildst our days, O night stars full of infelicities, O triple-titled Hecate, queen and goddess, bereave my life, or living strangle me, confound me quick, or let me sink to hell. Thrust me forth the world, that mongst the spirits the infernal lakes may ring with my laments. O miserable, desperate, desolate, distressful wretch, worn in mishaps, yet in mishaps abounding. What shall I do, Or whither shall I fly to venge this outrage, or revenge my wrongs? Come, wrathful furies, with your ebon locks, and feed yourselves with mine inflamed blood. Ixion's torment, Sisyphus's rolling stone, and the eagle tiring on Prometheus, be my eternal tasks. The extreme fire within my heart may from my heart retire. I suffer more sorrows I endure than all the captives in the infernal court. O troubled fate, O fatal misery, that unprovoked dealest so partially. Say, fretful heavens, what fault have I committed, or wherein could mine innocence offend you, when, being but young, I lost my first love, Crassus? Or wherein did I merit so much wrong, to see my second husband, Pompey, slain? But mongst the rest, what horrible offense, what hateful thing, unthought of, have I done, that in the midst of this my mournful state, naught but my father's death could expiate? Thy death, dear Scipio, Rome's eternal loss, whose hopeful life preserved our happiness, whose silver hairs encouraged the weak, whose resolutions did confirm the rest, whose end, sith it hath ended all my joys. O heavens, at least permit of all these plagues, that I may finish the catastrophe, sith in this widowhood of all my hopes, I cannot look for further happiness. For, both my husbands and my father gone, what have I else to wreak your wrath upon? Now as for happy thee, to whom sweet death hath given blessed rest for life's bereaving, O envious Julia, in thy jealous heart, venge not thy wrong upon Cornelia, but, sacred ghost, appeaseth thine ire, and see my hard mishap in marrying after thee. Oh, see mine anguish, haply seeing it, 'twill move compassion in thee of my pains, and urge thee, if thy heart be not a flint or drunk with rigor, to repent thyself, that thou inflamedst so cruel a revenge in Caesar's heart upon so slight a cause, and madest him raise so many mournful tombs, because thy husband did revive the lights of thy forsaken bed, unworthily opposing of thy fretful jealousy gainst mishap, as it my help had been, or as if second marriage were a sin. Was never city where calamity hath sojourned with such sorrow in this? Was never state wherein the people stood so careless of their conquered liberty, and careful of another's tyranny? O gods, that erst of Carthage took some care, which by our fathers pitiless was spoiled, when thwarting destiny at Afric walls did topside turvy turn their commonwealth, when forceful weapons fiercely took away their soldiers sent to nourish upon those wars, when fired their golden palaces fell down, when through the slaughter the Afric seas were dyed, and sacred temples quenchlessly inflamed. Now is our hapless time of hopes expired. Then satisfy yourself with this revenge, content to count the ghosts of those great captains, which conquered, perished by the Roman swords, the Hanois, the Hamilcars, Hasdrubals, especially the proudest Hannibal, that made the fair Thrasymene so desert, for even those fields that mourned to bear their bodies. Now, Loden, groan to feel the Roman corses. Their earth we purple o'er, and on their tombs we heap our bodies, equaling their ruin. And as a Scipio did reverse their power, they have a Scipio to revenge them on. Weep therefore, Roman dames, and from henceforth veiling your crystal eyes to your fair bosoms, rain showers of grief upon your rose-like cheeks, and dew yourselves with spring tides of your tears. Weep, ladies, weep, and with your reeking sighs, thicken the passage of the purest clouds, and press the air with your continual plaints. Beat at your ivory breasts, and let your robes, defaced and rent, be witness of your sorrows. And let your hair that wont be wreathed in tresses now hang neglectedly, dangling down your shoulders, careless of art or rich accoutrement, that with the golden pearl we used before, that with the golden pearl we used before, our mournful habits may be decked no more. Alas, what shall I do? O dear companions, shall I live in these laments, widowed of all my hopes, my haps, my husbands, and last, not least, bereft of my best father, and of the joys mine ancestor enjoyed, when they enjoyed their lives in liberty? Must I live to see great Pompey's house, a house of honor and antiquity, usurped in wrong by lawless Antony? Shall I behold the sumptuous ornaments which both the world and fortune heaped on him, adorn and grace his graceless enemy? Or see the wealth that Pompey gained in war, sold at a pike and borne away by strangers? Die, rather die, Cornelia, and to spare thy worthless life that yet must one day perish. Let not these captains vainly lie interred, or Caesar triumph in thine infamy, that wert the wife to thine one and the other's daughter. But if I die before I have entombed my drowned father in some sepulchre, who will perform that care and kindness for me? Shall his poor wandering limbs lie still tormented, tossed with the salt waves of the wasteful seas? No. Lovely father and my dearest husband, Cornelia must live, though life she hateth, to make your tombs and mourn upon your hearses, where, languishing, my famous faithful tears may trickling bathe your generous sweet cinders, and afterward, both wanting strength and moisture, fulfilling with my latest sighs and gasps, the happy vessels that enclose your bones, I will surrender my surcharged life, and when my soul earth's prison shall forego, increase the number of the ghosts below. Non prosunt domino, quae prosunt omnibus artes.
And the story ends. Yes. So, Cornelia does not die at the end of the play. No. Going to do some doing some tomb making. Going to, I don't know, commission a nice architect to bury the dead there, and do proper obsequies on them. I mean, it's not to say she won't eventually, but first things first, is not really sure anyone else is going to do the job in her absence. There's so much here because we could say this is a scene with Cornelia, the chorus, and the messenger, but also we've got Scipio here. This relatively lengthy chunks of speech within the messenger's speech, which we've had again in previous neoclassical plays. As a technique, we certainly got it almost all the way through Cleopatra. So even when Cleopatra wasn't on, everyone at some point was being Cleopatra. So yeah, I particularly was taken by the sort of almost love letter quality to his sword before he kills himself moment. It's just like, we've been old friends, you and I. Don't let me down now. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this. I'm not a huge fan of Cornelia's "O Cruel Fortune," because if you're going to interrupt someone making a massive speech, you should really put a little more effort in, or a few more. The one random interjection is a bit tokenistic for my money. Did you feel it helped you, Dan, or was it a hindrance?
When it's funny because I was in a production of Dido once when we were actually told to interject during, and I was playing one of his compatriots, a group of us, and we were actually told to, at a couple points, sort of give acknowledge what he was saying, possibly with words, to Aeneas. And every time that somebody decided to do, I just refrained from doing it altogether. But every time somebody did it, the audience would just look directly over at this person and would just break the rhythm up of the whole Aeneas speech. And I feel that that's exactly what would have happened there. It's not enough to give it would become more humorous if you all of a sudden saw whoever's playing the messenger to take some swig of water, do something like that. It's completely inappropriate for the scene, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is a sort of a sense that the scene goes into a slightly different vein from that the speech goes into a slightly different vein from that point onwards. But yes, the O Cruel Fortune. And this is the problem with random interjections like that, is that they are quite difficult to play, because you've got, for Cornelia to suddenly exclaim something like that is always really hard. Any kind of exclamation like that, when you haven't said anything for absolutely ages, is just it's a big ask for anyone to do. Eric,
I was gonna offer the opposite, like the flip side of the coin, where she's maybe like doing this sort of quieter aside, kind of like to herself, like, "Oh, cruel fortune," and then like sort of, because he's obviously like delivering the message, but still kind of not entirely listening to her.
Where it's a more pat on the back kind of thing while she says it, and kind of thing, rather than a big exclamation.
Yeah, like not to interrupt him, but sort of to go like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" kind of thing.
I like that.
Yeah, because otherwise, it'd be very difficult to pull that off. Other thoughts? There's a lot of text there. There must be more thoughts than that. Rachael.
No, it's sort of similar. Like, if Cornelia was giving him water in that moment, just to, it depends like what they were trying to do. I think it could just be that thing where he's not stopping at all, and she's just saying something to herself, or it could be, because you went on for like 6 pages, Dan. Like, it just, your throat just gets dry, and it might be one of those moments where somebody just hands you water and gives you like a second to drink, because he is a messenger, and to not offer anything to a guest or a messenger or something. I'm just saying this as like, because the words are so long, what are the actions in this scene that would like be breaking it up, I guess. Then also, I think Cornelia's last speech, because her father's drowned and she said she's going to go get his body. Maybe she drowns in the future, going to grab that, some sort of like Antigone type thing. Like, I don't want to leave you and getting picked apart by crows.
Yeah, I mean, he's made it really hard to do a proper burial, hasn't he? I mean, he really does. If you're going to kill yourself, do multiple things simultaneously. I mean, it's solid there. Liza.
What strikes me is that Scipio doesn't mention Cornelia as he dies. He talks to his sword. And Cornelia is standing right there, and the messenger is doubtless giving her a faithful account, and her dad didn't mention her. So that's a thing. And yet she chooses not to embrace the mercy of death, but to live to bury him. I think, the real tragedy might be that Cornelia's fate is so determined by the men in her life, who all seem to be unlucky. And we see in her first speech that she believes she's the curse. But she's not. It's them. And
it's not been a good year for her. It's not been a good time.
They drag her down with them, and I think that's Cornelia's tragedy, that she has pretty much nothing to do in this play but react to things, and the only decisions she has to make are between slightly different shades of reacting to things, and whether to live or not live. Anyway, beautifully read by all.
Dan.
To respond to that one, I wonder if the recounting of this and speaking to the sword rather than talking about her, she looked at this possibly as, I guess, an honorable way to die, somebody who was dying with like staring death into the face. And rather than getting emotionally involved, I guess, in some sort of way, I'm just going to go out very stoically. Because the way that she handles it, I mean, who's to say if what happens after this play, but she goes ahead and buries him, and she doesn't want to kill herself or die herself. It's almost like she learned from this example. After all that's happened, hearing that story, it kind of resolved everything for her, possibly. I don't know. I mean, that's just one interpretation that I would take from it, because I would say that she's gone on to live, and you know what, he died with, I guess, with honor, like you were saying yesterday, I believe, about, you know, committing suicide can be an honorable thing, that she was able to respect, you know, what actually had happened, and then go ahead and bury him while she still feels sad. The other thing is, I was just doing a quick word count. It's about 2,230 words, I think the messenger has in that speech. This was an exercise of, certainly, the thing that I really took away from this, because I'd gone ahead and restructured the entire thing back to the way it was originally printed. And it was something that I wondered how it would work, especially with the way that the units are broken up, by whether by indents or by punctuation and whatnot. I didn't have a hard time after, because of the breathing. It was really a thing of, well, you're going to use all of your rhetorical methods here, including when are you going to breathe and when are you going to take your long pauses. So for me personally, I would think that anybody who's doing this speech would hopefully know what they're doing and be able to help themselves like all singers would.
Yeah, it's yeah, you know, we've got to remember, you know, messages are, you know, he's a professional, you know, he's got to deliver a message clearly, and you know, there's a lot of narrative to get across. You know, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. I'm being slightly facile there. Liza.
We were talking a little earlier about Cornelia's interjection in the middle of what's essentially one long speech for the messenger. And I just wonder if that interjection is there in case the actor dries.
It's no, in my experience, it's more likely to be the reverse. I put in the chat, you know, heaven help the messenger if Cornelia does not come in with that line. Because I've been in situations where you've got an incredibly long speech and then one person's got one line and they should deliver it now, and then they don't, and it totally throws you. Actually, it's the worst.
I'm sure it would, but if she doesn't come in, he can just carry straight on.
No, you think that.
It's a little bit arrhythmic, but he can. And if he dries in the second half, then she can simply come in with "O cruel gods," although we hope he wouldn't dry. Obviously, these were professional actors whose skills of memorization were highly developed.
But yeah, Dan.
This goes back also to the idea of, I mean, whether or not this was meant to be played or was actually played. If the way that, I mean, it really does appear a lot like poetry, and why I've been, I guess, going on and on about how it's been structured, especially on the page. One other thing I noticed about how the quarto is structured is that that units almost never, whenever you've got to flip the page, you're almost never going to be in the middle of a long speech, or the last line of one and starting a new unit or something like that. It was almost as if even the printer was aware of breaking up the units, so as not to, when you are reading this out loud, to, I guess, break the rhythm of the piece. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's analogous to what we do when we're actually turning these things into a full cast audio, is you make sure that you have a speech that, or a point where you can turn the page, and when doing the formatting for these things.
So, right, no, and it's absolutely for the script production Bible that we would have today, even back in the day with what was called the book, and with the manuscript playbooks. If there was going to be some sort of stage direction on the top of one leaf where you would have to turn the leaf over, the bookkeeper, now we would call the stage manager, would have recopied that stage direction onto the bottom of the previous leaf on the recto side of it, so as you would not flip the page. Oh, by the way, you've got to do something here. You know, they were purposely structuring it so for that exact purpose there, so it's not to break up action, or so you are warned ahead of time of these things. So when I see this cruel fortune here, and this being meant to be read out loud orally, rather than necessarily on the structure there, it seems to be on purpose. Whether it was used as a device, as everyone is saying, I think that's also true. But everything seems to be pretty carefully chosen. Even the way that the verses, the way that things are spelled in here, it's much less often that you're going to find an 11th syllable in these pentameters, and it's by I think sometimes they forget to put the apostrophe there or shorten the ed there. But once again, these seems to be very carefully spelled out there and followed to some degree.
Okay. Any additional thoughts on Act 5 before we go into final thoughts? Eric?
No, it was sort of a general thought, I guess. But I don't know if you want me to add.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering about the function of like Caesar and the whole Cassius Brutus thing, because like it doesn't really add anything to the plot, does it? It just gives. I mean, okay, some of these don't really have a plot. Sometimes it's just long speeches, but it's not. That's not the case. Like Cornelia has things she wants from the beginning, or like she's trying to find from the beginning, sort of, of the play. Whereas, like introducing Caesar and Cassius and Brutus and Mark Antony in Act 4 seems a bit like, I don't know, giving the actors a break from other things. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. You're right. You could go straight from Cornelia going, "Death to Caesar, I'm happy to die," and then the messenger comes in, and it would function perfectly well. It might be a bit bread on bread. It might be a flow thing. We're getting into that sort of question. We're going beyond Kyd. We're going back to what Robert Garnier was thinking about. I mean, I understand why those debates are probably there in terms of the overall themes of what the play is about. But in terms of if we're thinking about this as Cornelia's journey, then yes, that's a valid point, that you could, if you wanted to focus much more on her, take those out and still have a functioning unit of drama. That's a really good point. I mean, I quite like the Cassius and Caesar bits, but you're right that they are a bit, because we never see Caesar die. I don't know. Maybe there was another play coming. I don't know all of Garnier's plays, so he might have done a Caesar one following this. I only know the ones in translation. I know there's 6 others, I think. Final thoughts around the room about this. Thoughts about what might be done with it, what we might do. Greg's given an interesting... Eric has given us an interesting stepping off point there. But other thoughts are available about what we might do with this now that we've got through the whole text. Overall, there's a lot of meat in there, but is there enough veg? That's the question. Liza, any final thoughts before we close the session?
Well, as I said yesterday, I like this play better than I was expecting to from looking at the structure of it. And, Cornelia has some lovely speeches. They're really well structured. For a woman who spends 5 acts basically just being sad about things, it's really well written. There are a lot of shades, a lot of different shades in it. The part that's a political meditation on tyranny and on, power, and on whether people in power deserve power and how they get to power, that meditation seems rather to be ongoing than to conclude. It doesn't really, it can only, we know what's going to happen to Caesar. I suppose it takes that knowledge for granted in its audience, but apart from Cornelia having lost all of the men in her life, I guess that's where it ends. Pompey's death is never avenged. we know it's going to be, but it never is. So, yeah. Again, I don't know if it's stageable, but it would be fun to try out.
It's stageable. It's stageable.
I'll take your word for it.
Absolutely. No, there's no problem with that. It's the question of what is its best form. That's the question. What is the best option for this play in terms of staging? Is the question. Rachael, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just what you were just saying, Liza. I don't remember if it was in here, but I think the play mentions Lucrece once, like Lucretia, who changed Rome from a kingdom, into a republic by her rape. And I wonder if Cornelia is supposed to be the transformation of the republic into the empire, from the loss of her husband. And that's why she's, it's being, I feel like this play is very much, about, just what makes this play stand out to me is that it's so, it begins with the chorus being so scientific that we had yesterday, and now it's so very political today. And maybe maybe it's showing us a little bit of why Kyd wound up being, arrested or tortured or imprisoned or something like that, because there is some stuff that's very much questioning a lot of things, and some of the talking between Cassius and Brutus seems like it seems like a logical, like an argument of logic that you'd see in like an older philosophical work, a dialogue or something about and like how you said Machiavelli before, very much like an argument on how to rule, just written in a different way. So yeah, seems very on fire in terms of maybe broaching things that were taboo and crossing just a little bit too much of a line for people of the time.
Well, it's really interesting how often Julius Caesar and various Roman things are used to address questions of statecraft in the early modern period. There's you're doing let's talk about people who are in power who get killed. And history plays, English history plays, do that as well. There's sometimes fine lines balanced between how far you go with that kind of thing, and sometimes you go too far. Excellent thoughts, Eric. Any final thoughts?
I don't know about like where you would put this, because there's a part of me going like, okay, I love audio, but I don't know if I could sit through 6 pages of Messenger again.
Well, we can cast a Scipio for a start, and there's a battle going on there. The sound designer will have a field day. Have so much fun with that.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I was trying to think of like sort of the arc of the play, because it starts off with Cicero sort of talking about how Rome is doomed and sort of about to be basically enslaved, and then sort of ends with Cornelia going, I want to die, but I'm actually not going to die. I'm going to bury my father, and maybe that's like the sort of tragedy of it, like sort of honing in from the general to the personal, the political versus the personal. I don't know, something like that. It's hard to find like a sort of thread. It's not like sort of misfortunes of Arthur or Cleopatra, where it's a very clear, full, so to speak.
Yes, because you don't get the impression that anyone outside of this circle are gunning for Cornelia. It's stuff is happening to her extended family, but nobody's turning up with knives to take her out or anything. There's no fear or explicit threat to her apart from her position.
Well, also it's not like it's not like she starts off hopeful and then just like descends into madness or anything. It's just like there isn't a sort of evolution there. I guess it's from sad to angry to fury to sort of, and then back to depression or whatever. I like yesterday I mentioned the stages of grief, but I don't know if that's actually an accurate representation of this play.
Well, I think we need another 3 stages. I don't know if we can find them in there.
You do find with many of these playwrights that although the language that we use around mental health these days is very much a 20th and 21st century language, that these playwrights might not have known the names of these symptoms, but they sure do know what it is. They know what depression is. They know what post-traumatic stress is. They know what trauma is. So yeah, they did make and they did study the human mind and emotions.
Dan, any final thoughts?
I was just doing a little bit of a comparison with looking at the Garnier text, because this single line was just something I wondered. Okay, I wonder how it appeared in the original, or in not the original, but in Garnier's original text, I should say. And so it's funny because it actually is a rhyming couplet, whereas the messenger's line is going to finish up the line before. So in there, she says, "Aux fortunes cruelles," and the messenger says, "On ne résista plus." To follow with that. So no, rhyming couplet, sorry, but it's meant to finish off that line there. So it doesn't seem that, for whatever reason, although Kyd took a lot of liberties, I would say this is much more of an adaptation than a translation. He decided not to, I guess, continue it in that fashion, really, because it doesn't seem to be like, "Oh, cruel fortune, none resisting now, the field was filled." Yeah. You could have done away with that line. Another one that I was confused by later on in the speech, I'd actually changed it back when we were speaking it, but I had changed it originally because I noticed our text said, "And Scipio, thy father." But then when I was going through to check the text, it said, "And Scipio, my father." And I wondered, why is it saying "my father" when he's clearly talking about Cornelia? And it turns out that in the original, not original, but in Garnier's text, Cornelia actually interjects and says, "Et Scipio mon père," to say, so she does have a second interjection there. And it makes me wonder that whether the printer did, as much as I've been touting the printer here and there, cocked it up there. To put a speech heading, because the way that it's printed is, "And Scipio my father," it's left indented, and then it's right indented twice to "when he beheld." So it seems to me that something might have been missed there. So yes, it was correct, actually, just no speech heading. And so yes, she also has another interjection there. Setting all that aside, I loved it. I loved this play. I think it's of its own genre that I think that 21st century audiences may not be so familiar with, but I think probably specialists of this period, one of which I am not, or this type of play, would really appreciate this type of, I guess, long lamentation and following Cornelia's journey through what Liza is saying and through what Eric was saying yesterday about, I guess, the types of trauma and grief that one goes through. And I do think that it's a journey worth following. I was moved quite a bit through some of these speeches, including by the reading the messenger's speech. I don't know where the Caesar text lies, but I do think that can be tied in. It's tied in with Tragedy of Marc Antoine, the other text. So yes, those two can be paired together if one were to present this in radio or whatever form. Or once again, Kyd doesn't have a lot of plays, and he's got one of the top ones that most people would agree is one of the best early modern plays out there. So I don't think it's a hard sell at all.
No, and the thing is, I don't know that it needs to be for a specialist audience. I mean, I don't know that it would get a huge audience. I certainly probably wouldn't put it in a big space anyway, just because of the nature of the text. But I've presented plenty of plays that are like this to a relatively general audience, and you find people and they come to it and they react to it. And I don't think you need to stay. Well, it's only for a very small. We can find the audience for it and put it out there and see what audience it gets as well. I'm not worried about audience who comes to see these things, because at the moment we have an audience for nothing. So the idea that actually there's a fundamentally different audience for this or anything else is actually it's relatively untrue, because the difference is very few people against some very other few people as well. So it worries me not.
This well, I mean, I'm glad about that. And it's why I'm always, when people are talking about, well, we need to cut this line and cut this line for our 21st century sensibilities, I'm always thinking, well, the people who would be interested in watching this anyway would probably be more interested in hearing it closer to what was, I guess, reflected in the times, whether it was insensitive to our sensibilities today or to theirs or no. I'm more on the side of, hey, you know what? The people who are going to like this are going to like it, or are going to want to, or who are interested in this are going to hear it no matter what form. So why not do it in a form that, I guess, pays the proper homage to it?
Well, it depends really what reason you're putting cuts in, it's or adjustments to text. I mean, the only real reason I primarily do cuts is just actually for the shape of the evening, and length and how much a bum it requires to be attached to seat. This is not a problem for this play. It is not a long play. By any stretch of the imagination. It's probably over 90 minutes. How much over that depends on how you play it. You could stretch it over 2 hours if you worked really, really hard, but you probably shouldn't do it that way. But bits of it, want to go fast, bits of it want to go slow. So it's not a long thing, so in that sense. Eric?
I was just going to say that, considering that this is supposed to be about, Rome, but being attacked, so hasn't been attacked yet, or it has been attacked, or it's under siege. You could set this up as a sort of just frame it in terms of having them not be able to leave the city, which makes because when you're away from the action and you're not on the front lines, you're worried about what's going on the front lines. You don't know. I mean, I'm assuming, having never been in a war, but or any. But it just kind of feels very sort of there's a lot of talk about the action, but there is no action until you get Caesar and Cassius and all those guys, which is sort of it's still edge of your seat kind of action though, isn't it? Because you worry about what's going to happen. You don't want. I mean, you might want some of the characters to kill off each other, but that comes later.
Yeah, maybe we could do a die off at the end for all the characters can all do. We can have a few stabbings, and that'll make everyone happy. Yeah. Okay, we come to the end of the session. We've given this a first look, and certainly doing more with this is highly probable further down the line. Just simply for the scale of the piece makes it very, very easy to return to it sooner rather than later. All that remains to thank all these wonderful readers for their wonderful readings, some longer than others. All that remains is to thank everyone and say goodbye. Oh, cruel fortune!